Hey there, and welcome back to this video series on making your very own wooden fairy house. At this point in the game, we've created a base structure and we've added some doors. This week, I want to show you how to add a pond or river to your fairy house. Here are the supplies you're going to need to make your river or your lake. You're going to need some blue paint or brush. Next, you're going to need a material to line your body of water. I like to use rocks because they're super easy to find and they look nice. You're going to need a way to secure those rocks to your board. Since I am going to be using this clear coating and casting resin for my water, I can just use the Gorilla Glue, or I could probably even use a hot glue because this stuff will just bind it all together. This stuff, however, is not the same as our molding resin. This is a clear resin, and like the molding resin, it is expensive. It's about $20, $25 to buy this. I always wait till I have it at a coupon. But I also make more than one fairy house a year, so for me, it's worth it. If you're only going to build one fairy house and you don't want to spend the money, you could probably just shellac it if it's going to be outside, or even use Mod Podge if it's inside. In that case, you might want to secure your rocks with a better glue than, say, a hot glue gun. If you don't mind spending the money, or you're going to make more than one fairy house, this stuff's definitely worth it because it's going to give your lake or river some depth to it. This is the same stuff they use on model train sets. Finally, just for funsies, you can find some old pieces of wood, or in my case too, the little acrylic critters I made during my door video where I had some frogs and turtles. I'm going to add these to my water as well, and I need to do that, best to do this when the resin is wet. So these are all the things I'm going to need. Let's get started. The first step is to figure out where you want to put this body of water. Now I can tell you adding a river looks awesome, but it's got a few challenges. The resin, when we apply it, it's got the consistency of like really thick syrup or honey. It runs. So you need to have a way to contain it so it doesn't run off the edge of your board. I've really only made 2 rivers. I find that they're kind of a lot of work, so I tend to go with round bodies of water, even if they're long round bodies of water. So in my case, looking at my house, I've got my doors on this side, and when I have my fairies coming out the door, they're not going to want to step in the water. So I'm going to put my water on the back side of my house. Sorry, I didn't realize the video wasn't going, so I'll repeat what I said. Basically, I took my paint and squirted it back here, and I'm painting the shape of my lake that I want, about that big. I wanted to leave some edge around it so I can put some stones or a bench or something. I don't want to come right up to the edge. I'm not making a river, I'm making a lake. And this is my first coat. I do not need to worry if the edges are rough. I'm going to put stones there to cover that. So that looks pretty good. I'm gonna let that dry. Okay, my lake is pretty dry. My next step is to line the lake with rocks. I'm going to use rocks. You could use anything you want. I'm going to use rocks, and I am going to use the Gorilla Glue because mine's going to be outside, and I just want to make sure. So here we go. Okay, the lake is lined with the stones. I did try to butt the rocks up right up next to each other because otherwise what happens eventually is when I pour the resin, it will try to ooze its way between the stones. So between the glue and the rocks, I'm hoping that we contain most of the resin. Some of it will leak out, but now we let this dry. All right, my lake is dry, my rocks are dry, but I can see there's gaps in there. So I'm just gonna take my Gorilla Glue and just kind of schlook it in there, push it in between some of these rocks, try to minimize the damage that I know is gonna happen when this resin is gonna leak out. I don't even think I need to wait for this to dry necessarily. I just need it to be there. See what happens if I do that. Shove some of this. Suppose you could use hot glue for this too, since the resin will, the resin is gonna glob onto it, so it'll still work outside, but as long as I got my Gorilla Glue, I'm just gonna use that. Okay, so with that in mind, just got that in there. I could even I've got a little bit of sand that I got from my driveway. I'm gonna have like a little shore going on here. I'm gonna push that into the glue too, to just get a little bit of sand on the very edge. That'll help take up some of that glue and create a little barrier. Probably not enough, but we'll see. Some of this resin always gets through. It's not the end of the world. I'll show you what to do with that. You can use it to your advantage. Okay, so I've just pushed some sand in there. Kind of give a little beach. Super cute. Okay. All right, now we're ready to mix our resin. And this is the clear casting resin, not the white stuff. Works the same way, but it's going to be clear, of course. That's why it's the clear casting resin. I'm also gotten out my little froggies. I've gotten out some interesting little sticks I'm going to add in there, and some little tree cookies to be like little stepping stones across there. You can use rocks too, whatever you want to throw in there. You have some working time. This resin takes a while to dry. And again, this stuff was as pricey as it was. I used about that much. So I could probably get like 3 different nice sized lakes out of this. That looks about equal. If you're gonna do a river, which does look really cool, work a river through there, you just have to stop it up on the ends somehow. I've had the rocks on the side and I've used like tape, which you then peel off. It kind of gets stuck, but the resin can be sanded, so you can sand off any tape stuck on there. I've also used a hot glue gun, and then the glue glob kind of gets stuck in there, but it's kind of clear, so it's all right. All right, that's pretty equal, so I'm going to pour one into the other. And I'm going to stir. Really mix it up. Scrape the sides down. I do wear gloves for this stuff because I don't know what's in it. Doesn't hurt. And safety glasses. Certainly don't want to get stuff in my eyes. Okay, so I'm just going to stir. Alrighty. I am ready to pour. And I'm just going to pour it in. Scrape the cup. Does, like I say, have the consistency of like a kind of almost like honey, a little runnier. Then I'm going to just push it around with my stick. If my table were level, which it may or may not be, it'll settle itself out. It looks like it's all at one side. It's going to kind of settle depending on which way it runs. It's pretty high viscosity, so I may not know till later which direction my table runs, but I am going to push it to at least include everything there. And it'll ooze its way into this sand, I believe. You can help it along a little bit too. Okay. And while it's still wet, I'm going to add my little log there. Make a stepping bridge across it. I'll just put some sticks at this end randomly. And maybe one of my frogs. Some of my frogs can be living over here. Alrighty, that's cute. Alrighty, I've got all my stuff in there. I also have some like fake ivy, you know, the stuff you get at Michael's. I'm gonna just snip off a couple leaves and just stick that in there, because that's fun. Make it look like lily pads. I'm gonna have one of my little froggies sitting on there. Okay, and this has got to dry for a while. So I'm gonna let that sit. Okay, there's not a whole lot else I can do with this right now. It's very sticky and wet. I have to let it sit. I usually let it sit overnight. It takes a while for it to dry. I do check on it. I want to make sure the stuff is spreading out. I will notice often that some of the resin will be seeping through the rocks out to the other side. That's okay. A couple things I can do for that. I can get some more sand or some wood shavings or something and just kind of sprinkle it in there to soak it up, because it does become like a shiny spot on my grass, which looks very fake. The other thing I do is sometimes I'll pick up some of this moss from the dollar store or from Michael's, and you can stick that in there too. You can also put it in there, but I usually stick it, and I will later too, around the edges to sort of like jazz it up. And we'll talk about that in the decorating section of our videos, which is not this one. However, you can do some of this decorating now if you notice that your resin oozes its way through, and it won't happen right away. Just check on it every couple hours, and you may notice that wherever the glue wasn't sealed in between the rocks very well, which is often, that some of that resin will leak through. And that's okay, don't worry about that. We'll cover that up with some moss. The other thing I'm gonna do, because my garage is not exactly a clean place, I don't want my nice shiny lake to end up all spotted with dust, is I've taken a piece of paper here and I'm just gonna put it over the top. I could cover the whole thing, say, with a towel or a tarp or something, just to make sure that I don't end up collecting a bunch of unwanted dust in my beautiful shiny lake. All right, it's the next day and my lake is done. It's nice and hard, shiny. There's a little bit of leakage here, not much actually. That did a pretty good job putting that Gorilla Glue there. I'll decorate it later around the edges just to hide up some of that stuff, but that looks great. I can see some of it's kind of oozed here, but basically it's just helped keep the rocks in too. And the sand, it did soak into the sand, so the sand is now very stuck on there, which is good. So are my little critters. That looks awesome. All right, that's all I have on adding bodies of water to your fairy house. It's looking pretty good. I think we're ready to start on stairs and ladders.